don't worry. I didn't forget the last 2 books. I promise. We're gonna get to that recap right now. But before we get started, if you want to like, comment, and subscribe, that would be amazing. Okay, I'm throwing you right into the recap. I'm not gonna make you wait any longer. Enjoy! Let's finish up Siege and Storm. Also, there's been a few changes to the board, obviously, and there's a graveyard behind me now. Gone but not forgotten. And we also have plenty of new characters that I will introduce you to along the way. Or some characters that just got upgraded to an actual picture this time. Alina, Mal, and Nikolai have just finished up with their meeting with the king, and are now heading to the Little Palace, where 50 total Grisha are waiting for them. That's all we have left, including the ones Fiedor brought. Oh yeah, it's a great start. Sergi, Marie's boyfriend, is the first one to step up. After a little back and forth between him and Alina, finally she says, "I'm here to lead the second army." Around the room, cheers break out, and also some very angry comments as well. Not everybody loves this decision. She just started with them like 6 months ago, and now she wants to lead an army. I mean, it's the logical step. Sergi just says, "We expected as much, but the Corporal? I don't know how to say this word. Are the most powerful Grisha, so one of us should lead." Then, a familiar voice from the crowd says, "According to you, bloodletter." And there stands Zoya, which is the last person I expected to see in this group of people. Alina's thinking the exact same thing, because what is she doing here? She was obsessed with the darkling, and now she's back? But she says, "I speak for the Ifrikai, and we stand with the Sun Summoner." And frickin' Maria, supposedly Alina's friend, says, "Not all of us." Shut up. Actually, just shut up. We get it. You like Sergi, okay? We get it. Someone from the crowd comments, "She wasn't even raised here. She doesn't even go here." And that's when Tolia steps in and says, "Grisha are born, not made. Pop off." Everybody is arguing in this crowd now, and then Fiedor steps up and says, "We return to Os Alta to follow the Sun Summoner, and no one else." They all keep arguing. Alina raises her hands to perform the cut. She's originally planning to cut Sergi in half. I mean, it's a way to establish dominance, but I don't know if it's the way we want to go right now, babes. Luckily, at the last second, she decides, "I'll just cut the ceiling in half instead." Which I guess makes a pretty skylight now? I don't know. After this, she says, "Only I have seen what he can do, and only I have faced him and lived." I mean, it's a pretty good point. She then tells the group, "I don't care what you think of me. If you stay here, you will follow me, and if you don't want to, you will be gone by tonight." Alina and the group she walked in with then walk into the Darkling's quarters, which are now her quarters. And she starts to think about the fact that she almost murdered someone today. She was back at the Little Palace for like 5 minutes maybe, and almost killed a man. Good job, Alina. Great job. 10 out of 10. She's in the Darkling's old room, now her room, when the Darkling appears to her in some sort of vision again, and he's just saying her name. She's looking away, just repeating to herself, "This isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real." He then comes up to her and touches her cheek, and she can feel it. That's when she floods the room with light. Mal then runs in to check on her. He's like, "You all right?" And she still doesn't tell him anything about the Darkling visions or anything that's going on. She's just like, "Yeah, totally fine, totally chill. Just wanted to use my light powers. Make sure those still work, you know?" She wakes up the next morning to arguing outside of her door in the common area of her space. She walks out, and of course Sergi is going on about how this is unacceptable because she sent out a letter last night that stated that 2 Grisha from every order would elect 2 members to be on the war council. And Sergi thinks because his Grisha order is super special and really powerful that he should have more than 2, and others should have less. That only makes sense. Alina basically just goes, "Shut up, oh my gosh, no, this is how we're doing it. What I says goes now, Sergi. You got it?" Now, some names that we know are on the war council. Mal will be there because he's the head of the guard. Nikolai is always there. Fiedor has been elected. Zoya, Sergi. David is also there as well on the war council. There's more members, but I don't have all their names. Before they all leave, she goes, "Also, all the orders are gonna sit together for meals now. No more just sitting with your clique. We're all gonna be friendly, and it's gonna be a great time. People will even sit at my table." Sergi doesn't like this too much, so he's not having a great time right now. And then, on top of this, she says, Also, fabricators are gonna start combat training. And then she tells them all to leave. And Nikolai comes in, he's been waiting at the doorway, he's overheard all of this. They have breakfast together, they chat about a bunch of other stuff. Mal eventually comes in, he sees that Nikolai's there, bows. Alina tells him, you don't have to do that. Nikolai just goes, yes he does. Mal then just says, you heard Prince Perfect. Nikolai then goes, I've had a lot of nicknames, but that is the most accurate one I've ever had. Nikolai is walking a very, very dangerous line. Nikolai then invites Mal to go on a boar hunt that some of the royals are going on tomorrow, and basically forces him to say yes. Alina and Mal are not too happy about this, but he's gonna go. Nikolai then informs them that the Darkling may be in a mountain range that borders Shuhan and Ravka. This brings him to talking about forming an alliance with Shuhan to maybe go against the Darkling together. Maybe they would have a better shot then against this evil, evil man with too much power. Also informs us that the Sun Summoner worshippers, they're calling them pilgrims, are growing outside of Os Alta's gates. It's basically a cult the apparatus started of people who think that Alina is a saint. Alina then goes to see Baghra. She's still alive. She did lose her eyeballs though, and isn't looking too great. And we have a little helper called Misha that is helping her out, reading her stories, keeping her entertained, getting her what she needs. Alina went to go see her to ask her about the firebird. Baghra does not want to help her at all. Alina then threatens Baghra by saying, what if I took away your hut and all your comfortable things and made you sit outside all by yourself? Then would you talk? Alina pretty instantly regrets saying this, but she said it. Baghra just responds laughing and saying, you've taken to power well. It will hunger more as it grows. Alina responds saying, I didn't mean it. Alina ends up leaving after a few more failed attempts to get her to talk about the firebird. And she's kind of thinking, maybe I should make good on that threat, but I'm not going to do that. That's not the type of person I am, as of yet. At a war council meeting, Alina is telling them everything she knows about the Nichavoya. And then David starts talking and telling us what he knows about them as well. He says, this is not Grisha power, this is Murzost power. That word means magic and also abomination. It's the same word in their language. He tells them the energy, the substance of this has to be coming from somewhere. It must be coming from him. Alina is then sitting there thinking maybe he knows something about the firebird. She's going to ask him about it after the meeting, but right after, David runs off. He's nowhere to be seen. David is me after any social event. The next morning, Mal is going out on his trip. Alina is saying goodbye to him. He leaves without even giving her a hug, and he looks excited to be going, to get away from the palace. Alina and Nikolai start going to a war council meeting that's with other royals and soldiers and nobles in the Grand Palace. Alina feels very overlooked in these, but Nikolai quickly finds his footing and has all of their respect for him very, very fast. Nikolai then takes her to the lake, saying, I promise I won't compose ballads of your beauty. I just want to show you. She's been a little on edge about him ever since he randomly kissed her in front of a group of people, but he's showing more restraint and respect now. They get to the lake. He explains that he's going to build a pier here so he can rebuild the hummingbird, the flying ship thing. So, in case the Darkling does come and attack them and they can't win, he can get Alina and some other very important people out so they can live to fight another day. He ends this by going, but I still believe we can win, Alina. Alina later then ends up finding David in the fabricator workshop. He's working on some mirror dishes that they're hoping they can use for Alina to be able to amplify her cut power, the only thing that is destroying the Nichavoya that the Darkling is making. She takes this time to ask him if he knows anything about Ilya Morozovit. David explains to us a little bit more of this man's backstory. David explains to us that people called him the Bonesmith because he didn't just find the amplifiers, he is the one who made them, using actual magic. No one really knows how, though. David also explains to us during this time that the Black Heretic died during the accident that happened when he created the Fold, and then his son came out of hiding. She takes this time wondering how the Darkling got away with this for so long, asking, where was his son? David explains that a Darkling and the Darkling's heir would never live at the palace at the same time to make sure they never were without a Darkling. The accident that resulted in the Shadowfold was from the Darkling trying to recreate Morozovit's magic. He explains that the Darkling then had Morozovit's journals all burned. He shouldn't even know they exist, but he does. Alina then asks him, why did you come back? David just says, I knew he would be able to control you with the collar, but I didn't think he would do something like that. How did nobody catch on that this man is absolutely insane? I don't know how this happened. Alina then ends up going to the library trying to find more on Morzovich. She finds this list that she can't really read because it's in a different language. Tolya comes in to check on her during this time. He is one of her guards. And he goes, oh, I can read that. I'll get it translated for you. She says, thank you. She's pretty sure it's some stuff on Morzovich. Tolya, before leaving, then says, you should check out the chapel. I think there might be some more information there. Once Mal gets back, these two go to the chapel. They don't see anything useful in there. It's just kind of an old, rotting chapel. They don't know why Tolya would tell them to go there. But as she's walking out, she sees the darkling yet again, sitting in a pew. This time, he's just sitting there like, do you have nothing better to do in your free time? What are you doing here? They make it out of the chapel without any further incident from creepy darkling vision thing. Once they're out, they hear a rustling in a bush nearby, and there comes Vasily, the other prince. Alina tells Mal she's good, and Mal ends up leaving them. During this conversation, Vasily then proposes to her. She's now had not one, but two princes propose to her in the matter of a week or two? My gosh. She of course says no to this, obviously. Now, Vasily had also learned that Nikolai and Alina were going to these war meetings, so he starts going as well. Alina hates that he's going because he just likes to talk and talk, but he never actually has a reason for talking as much as he does. He's just trying to sound smart, but he's not. He's not a smart man at all. She's complaining to Nikolai about this. Nikolai's like, don't worry, he'll stop going soon once he sees how much work being a king actually takes when the darkling isn't controlling the whole country secretly. Alina, during the time that she's been here, has decided to send all the young Grisha home that are at the school learning still. Send them to a safer place away from Ols Alta, since it sounds like the darkling will be coming here for the battle. Nadia then comes up to her with her little brother Adric. He would have graduated this year and been in the Second Army. Alina reminds them of all the risks that he would be taking by staying here, but still decides to stay. So now we have him on our little crew as well. I guess we have like 51 Grisha now. We're doing great. Our Second Army is thriving. Now, at their time at the palace, Mal is now out of the palace constantly, hanging around the noblemen, going to parties. He's coming back drunk. He's not doing so well. They don't see a lot of each other anymore, but she figures it's for the best because he's clearly not happy in the palace, so why not just let him get out of the palace? And she doesn't really say anything about it. Now, Mal is sparring in the training room when Zoya walks up to Alina and says, I could watch him spar all day. Alina then kind of snaps and goes, Zoya, what are you even doing here? Why are you following me? You don't like me. I don't trust you. Why should I even let you stay? Now, a little bit of this might be jealousy. A lot of bit of this might be jealousy. Alina and Zoya go back and forth for a little bit. Eventually, Zoya explains that she had an aunt and a niece that was in the city that the Darkling destroyed by expanding the fold. And she says, I still don't like you or think you deserve this power that you have, but if you can keep Ravka free, then I will follow you. So, can I stay? Alina says she can stay, even though Alina really would like to kick her out right now because she is making googly eyes at her boyfriend Mal. Are they like, I don't know what they actually are. We're calling him boyfriend Mal for now. We'll see. Mal then comes up to Alina. Zoya flirtily asks him for a bow and arrow lesson, blah, blah, blah. Mal just brushes her off. Mal and Alina go back and forth about Zoya and how Alina just handled that interaction they just had. But then he says, hey, there's going to be a fortune-telling party tonight at one of the noblemen's houses. We should sneak you out and go. They go back and forth on this for a little while, but eventually she agrees to go. These two get dressed up in fortune-telling gear, and Tolya and Tamara are coming along as well, just to make sure Alina is protected. Now, these two are having some sweet moments. They're outside, but then eventually people start coming up to them asking for fortunes, and they start going off the wall with these fortunes. Alina's telling men they're gonna be bald, they'll get fat, they won't have any kids. Like, she is not... If you want a good fortune, don't go to her. Golly, Alina! Mal's trying to be nice with these fortunes, and she's just going absolutely insane. Then a fight starts inside, so they go, it's time to leave. Tamara takes Alina. They end up getting into, like, this pitch blackness. Tamara gets ripped away. Alina lights it up when she feels her hand get grabbed, and there is the apparat. The apparat is begging her to lead this holy army, saying that she is the daughter of Karamzin, reborn of the fold. You can bring about the dawn of the new age and be the leader. Come with me, I can make you strong enough to face the Darkling. She asks him, where's the firebird? The apparat says, I don't know, but when the darkling left the palace, he left a lot of his belongings there. He didn't know that would be the last time he left the little palace. This man is speaking in riddles. He won't give us a straight answer. He's like, you have Morozov's journals? The apparat's like, come with me, there are secrets buried deep, and then Mal and Tamara find them. Tamara goes after the apparat, he's running away. Tamara eventually comes back and is like, I lost him, he just disappeared. Is he using magic? How did he just disappear, Tamara? Why is he just gone, Tamara? Where'd he go? Did he just go poof? What happened? Back at the palace now, Mal and Alina finally have a big argument about how Mal feels like she's slipping away and they never see each other anymore, and he doesn't know how to stop this. He doesn't feel like he belongs at the palace. His life is just so hard. It's not like she's trying to run a whole army or anything, right? Then they realize that they haven't been alone together in a room for weeks, so they start kissing, but then she sees the darkling behind Mal, so she stiffens up. Mal takes this as her not being into him anymore and is like, oh, great. Alina tries to stop him, saying, Mal, the darkling. He just stops her from saying that, and they argue a little more, and then he leaves. This is the worst head guard. She says the darkling, and you're like, I'm a mad boyfriend, I'm just gonna leave now. Mal, I know you've been through a lot too, but I think Alina's been through a little more than you. Just a touch. Okay, so maybe we could have some compassion here. Alina was trying to have compassion for you, but you have nothing to give her? Men. Alina then falls asleep, not in a great mood. The next morning, she's on the roof of the little palace. She gets to talk with David about the light glass bowls that he's been working on to amplify her cut. He says they'll be ready in 2 weeks. This is not Prime 2-day shipping, unfortunately. She then talks to him about possibly removing her amplifiers because Mal has gotten so in her head, she's thinking, maybe I should just give up all my power. She knows she won't do this, but this boy is causing problems right now. David explains to her, no, we can't remove them. It would cause something even worse than the fold. So, safe to say, even if she wanted to, she's not taking those off, ever. At a war council meeting, Vasily has been tiring of all the king work, and then Nikolai, Alina, and Vasily all get into an argument at the war council meeting. Alina and Vasily are more in an argument, and Nikolai just gets worked up for the first time that we've really seen him get worked up. Afterwards, Nikolai and Alina are talking. He's like, I don't know why I lost my temper. She responds saying, it's because you actually care about what happens to this country, unlike your brother. Now, Vasily likes to commonly raise the tension between the two brothers by saying that Nikolai is a bastard child. It is rumored across the land, it may be true, but we have no confirmation on that. Now, over the next little bit, she keeps trying to talk to Mal. Mal just keeps walking away or finding an excuse not to talk to her. The visions that she's having of the darkling are getting worse, and Vasily is off to go at an auction for some reason. You know, a war's about to happen, but he's gonna go to a fun auction that's going on in the country. What a smart prince, right? Now, one day, the dishes are finally ready to test that David has made. They test them out and they work amazing. She cuts down a whole forest, she sends it to the lake. There's like a giant line where she sent this magnified cut through. Everybody's celebrating up on the roof. They're all running down, cheering, celebrating, having a great time, running to where the mark ends on the lake. While Alina's running down, she runs into Mal and she's like, why weren't you at the presentation? You should have come. She then noticed that Mal is bruised and doesn't look too great. He just responds with something you need. They argue for a bit and she leaves in a way worse mood after everybody was celebrating and this man decided to bring her mood down. Nikolai and the squallers that he's recruited for the Kingfisher, the new hummingbird per se. Alina goes up with them. Afterwards, Nikolai and her are at the end of the pier sitting together, and Nikolai says, I think we may just have a chance. Nikolai also jokes with her that Vasily is back and he could propose again, possibly soon. Alina's like, oh, great. Also, how did you know about that? Nikolai just responds saying, I did the same thing. I knew he would also do it. Nikolai then gets a little more serious, saying, he would be your better chance at power, because I'm most likely a bastard. Alina's a little shocked because Nikolai and vulnerability are not something we get to see very often in the same room, honestly. And she goes, I thought those comments didn't bother you. And Nikolai just says, I lied. They talk a little longer, they're connecting. They're kind of both leaning in, and he comments saying, I would kiss you right now, but I won't do that until you're thinking of me and not trying to forget him. She storms off after this comment saying, at least we know you can say the wrong thing sometimes. Later, she finally builds up the courage to go and knock on the guards' quarters. Tamara answers the door and she asks, where's Mal? Tamara just says, come with me. Mal is in the fighting ring fighting a squalor, a Grisha. Normally, normal humans don't do that because it's not a fair fight, but he ends up winning this fight. Alina was terrified the entire time and wanted to step in. Tamara stopped her from doing that. Afterward, everyone runs up to celebrate him. And then Zoya runs up and kisses him. Mal is not kissing back. Alina is just standing there thinking, please don't kiss her back. Mal then kisses Zoya back. And then after, he sees Alina and she goes running off. Mal is chasing her down. He catches up to her. They start arguing about a lot of stuff again. He then grabs her by her wrist. They both feel a sharp jolt of energy go between them, and so that he lets go of her very fast. Mal just says it's never easy with us. Alina goes, it won't ever be easy and comfortable with me. I can't just leave this behind. I will never be that girl you used to know ever again. Used to know would have been better, but okay. He says, I want her back. And she says, she's gone. She's not coming back. Eventually Mal says, let's go back to the palace. I'm not leaving you out here alone. And they walk back. It's just, I'm sure that was a cheery walk together. I'm sure they had a great time with that. Now, at the door of her room, she tells Mal about the vision she's been having about the darkling. Mal uselessly opens his mouth, closes it, and then walks away. Are we trying to make him the most unlikable character right now? Because you're succeeding. Oh my gosh. She then ends up crying herself to sleep. Good job, buddy. Great job. The next morning, she wakes up feeling Mal kissing her. She starts kissing back, thinking, oh, everything's gonna be all right. And then she looks again, and Mal morphs into the darkling, and it's another one of the creepy darkling visions. She screams, and none of her personal guard come to check on her, meaning somebody is not on duty. If we had to guess somebody that wasn't on duty, who do you think it would be? That guy right here. That useless man right here. Now, Alina decides to take an unsupervised walk around town, just in the open. She has a scarf on, she has some disguise, so it's not obviously the sun summoner. Once she's at the edge of town, she sees the pilgrims outside of town, and they're all just chanting, Sancta Alina, Sancta, daughter of Ravka, daughter of Karamzin, Sol Korleva, Reba Dava Stolba. Now, the last part of that means daughter of two mills, which is the name of an ancient ruin that's in this tiny, unimportant town, but it's also the town that her and Mal were born in. She had gone out in the crowd of pilgrims just to be around them. When she runs into this woman on her way back into town, her scarf slips. They see that she has the collar of the sun summoner, and they start mobbing her. I mean, chunks of hair are getting pulled out. Eventually, luckily, Tolia and Tamara show up. I don't know why they were here, but apparently they followed her or something. They luckily get her out of there safely. Don't really know how. Could have ended up really bad. They get back to the palace. Mal has the audacity to ask, where were you? Tolia then slams him up against the wall, saying, where were you? It was your guarding time. Mal just says, I must have fallen asleep. And Tolia spits back, no, you were at the bottom of another bottle. Alina steps in and goes, I need to talk to Nikolai. Tolia, you can yell at Mal later. And I really hope Tolia does. I really hope so. When she gets back to the war room, Mal is in there. She asks him, do you remember anything about Karamzin? He says no. And then he goes, Alina, about the darkling. That's when Nikolai walks in. Honestly, thank goodness, because I can't stand this man right now. She tells him about this morning. Nikolai is obviously not happy about that. The one chance they have of beating the darkling just decided to go out in a crazy mob. She's so smart. She explains that the firebird could possibly live near where her and Mal were born, so they need to head there at some point. Because of the two mills that are there, that could have been the arch that they saw in the photo of Ilya Morozov. They argue about this, but eventually they agree that Mal will go once the fabricators have had the time to make a cage to bring the bird back for her to kill, so she'll have the power from it. Once they leave, Alina is obviously upset because she wanted to go as well, but Mal was having none of that. Nikolai does his best to comfort Alina. Alina then snaps at him in return, saying, you're just looking to get rid of him. Nikolai just responds, if I wanted to get rid of him and make you get over him, then I would have him stay here and keep wasting his life away where he's clearly unhappy and destroying this relationship all by himself. She ends this conversation saying, "The problem of heroes and saints is that they all die in the end." Now, we're at Nikolai's birthday dinner. Yay, Nikolai is older. They don't tell us an exact age, though, in the book. Okay. Anyways, Mal is there as one of the guards. He is on the opposite side of the room from Alina, so him and Alina are basically having a staring contest the whole time. Nikolai at some point nudges her and goes, "Could you pretend to be happy, please, actually?" Like, cool, I get it, you're having relationship problems, but, please, there are so many people here. Vasily is also back. He has kind of a smug smile on his face. Everybody's giving their toast for Nikolai, and eventually Vasily gets up to give his. He goes, "Brother, I'm so glad to be celebrating your birthday. Yay, yay, yay." Everybody starts cheering, and then he's like, "But actually, I didn't go to a random auction while we were at war. I went to go make an alliance with Frigida. Frigidin. They will be joining us in our fight against the Darkling." Nikolai is visibly upset for the first time in a long time, and he says, "Dare I ask what they wanted in return?" Vasily tells him they just wanted some ports in West Ravika that they could use, and also some lodging roads reopened. And of course they assume the Sun Summoner will destroy the fold after all this is done as well. Nikolai just asks, which roads? Vasily says, the ones somewhere south of Helmand, west of the permafrost. They're sufficiently defended by a fort. Nikolai then stands up asking, when did they reopen? Vasily's like, a little over a week ago. Why are you concerned? Did you ever stop to think why they would want those specific roads reopened? Because they needed timber? It's defended by a single fort. Nikolai is getting madder and madder. Everybody in the room is like, okay. He goes, "Brother, you are thinking of old war tactics. We are dealing with Nichavoya now. The Darkling could currently be just miles from here." Vasily responds saying, "You are making yourself look ridiculous." Oh, really? Is he? Okay, cool. I also hate this man. He's like, "Okay, then why aren't they here to celebrate?" "They're not here because there's about to be a massacre." What a fun birthday surprise. Vasily just says, "But he's in the south!" Because bad guys only stay in one place, and you know exactly where they are at all times, and they wouldn't have anybody else looking out for news, would they? No. Nikolai says all of that, but in a much calmer tone, and not psychotically. He ends it saying, "You walked into a trap so obvious that even a child would have recognized it." The queen then tries to help her oldest child out, and a general chimes in saying the fort's fully manned. Nikolai just says, "Everybody at that fort is dead now, due to your pride and stupidity." Vasily then says, "You overreach, you little bastard." Nikolai just says, "Yes, call me out, brother. That'll help. Look around the table. Every general, every high nobleman, most of the, what is their last name? Most of the Lanzov line is all at this table, as well as the Sun Summoner. All in one place, on one night." Vasily is trying to gaslight all of us, saying, "It's just his jealousy. It's fine." Then the warning bells start that they installed for the Darkling. Nikolai says, "You have handed him Ravka." And then the windows explode, and Nichavoya start jumping through. Vasily blames Nikolai and Alina for this, starts charging at Alina. Mal steps in the way, but he didn't even have to because Vasily just gets ripped up by Nichavoya, and he's dead now. He's real dead now. Welcome to the graveyard, Vasily. Nikolai then takes the king and queen to the Kingfisher. He tells Alina to meet them there. Alina says, "No, I have to help." So she goes off and help. He's going to the Kingfisher to get people away. Alina is running to the little palace to get to the amplifier. Now, just outside of the little palace on the steps, there are bodies and blood everywhere. Now, she sees the dishes on the roof. One is already broken, but there's somebody up there still manning the other one. So she does everything she can to get up there, because they may still be able to do some sort of damage. Luckily, this dish does do a fair bit of damage, and she's able to take out some of the Nichavoya, but not enough. There are so many of them right now. She orders everybody that's up there to go to the hall and close the door. As they're running back, we lose Fedor. He's gone. He's just taken. And then they have to continue on. We can't mourn him. We're in the middle of the battle. I get it. But like, oh my gosh. R.I.P. Fedor. Now, on their way down, they find Sergei holding a ripped open Marie. She's also dead now. Once again, R.I.P. We're losing people like flies right now. They grab Sergei and keep going. They get to the main hall, and luckily actually close the doors. Zoya and Nadia's brother Adric are fighting off the Nichevoya that are still in there. Alina lights up the room and all of them are gone, luckily now. Now they had planned ahead that they would be able to close these doors and no shadows would be able to get through, but unfortunately they didn't have enough time from hearing the warning bells to actually closing the doors, so there are bodies everywhere in this room as well. Tolia and Tamara are unaccounted for right now. I can't lose them, okay? They're too important. They make a plan to get to the upper town, they say, because they would rather die fighting than have the Darkling capture them and be tortured. Fair enough. Now, in this group that is running, we have David, Nadia, Adric, Sergi, Zoya. Mal is also with them. They throw up in the room. They throw out this light bomb that David had created at some point. David. And they are running, going. They're going as fast as they can, but she's doing everything she can. It is not enough. But then soldiers start pouring out of the wood, and they're led by Tolia and Tamara. This is the Soldate Soul, or Sun Soldiers, basically. The pilgrims that worshipped her. They're doing everything they can to attack the Nichevoya. They're dropping in numbers very, very fast, but the Nichevoya are distracted, so our group, then by guidance from Tolia and Tamara, start running to the chapel. They get to the chapel, Tolia shuts the door, Tamara is running to the back, she opens this frame picture so they can all go through the secret tunnel there. They debate if they should go in for a second, but then the Darkling shows up. Because why were they debating this right now? It's death or secret tunnel. I don't understand. They try to shoot and attack him, but his shadow creatures protect him. He tells Alina, if you stand down, I'll spare them, but you can't win right now. Tamara is telling her, Alina, we can still get you out of here. Alina asks the Darkling, what are your terms? The Darkling says, give yourself up and they all go free. Mal says, he's lying. The Darkling then goes, I'm not lying. Alina wants to come with me. I never left you, Alina. Whenever you called me when you were alone, I came, didn't I? This is telling us that he was also actually seeing her and actively seeking her out in those visions. She was not just going insane. The Darkling was actually kind of there in a weird mental state. They're arguing back and forth about everything. She starts to say no, and then the Darkling says, bring her out. And that's when he throws Genia on the floor. She is not looking great. She's lost an eye. She's covered in these bites from the Nichevoya, which, like Alina's scar, have left these black marks as well as the scarring on her. She is not this pretty princess anymore, unfortunately. The Darkling says, I have waged the war you forced me to. I'm sorry, buddy. I think you're the only one who forced anybody into a war right now, honestly. He continues saying, when will you let me stop? Together, we can put an end to all this suffering. Honey, you started the suffering. You did it, all by yourself. She finally says, all right, you'll let them go? The Darkling says, I need the tracker. Alina says, he goes free. You can't have both of us. Mal says, I'm not going anywhere. Mal, you haven't been helpful, wanting to stand up for her for so long. Why is now the time you decide to speak up? I'm so done with this character right now. Alina turns to Tolia and Tamar and orders them to take Mal with them. Mal asks her, what are you doing? And she says, I want this. I can't run from what I am. I can't go back to the girl I used to be. Mal is begging her not to, but she still ends up going to the Darkling's side. She then cups the back of his neck. Right before she kisses him, says, my power is yours. And then they start kissing. And now power is flowing through her. The power of the stag and the sea whip, but also the Darkling's power. And she breaks apart just a little bit and says, my power is yours and yours is mine. She then reaches across this connection she has with the Darkling now and starts using his power and summoning the Nichevoya of her own. And she uses this to drain both of their powers. She is ready to kill herself to end the Darkling as well. Mal ends up grabbing her right before she fades into nothingness, and she says, no, let me end this. He doesn't do that. And he takes her and carries her into the tunnel because, I mean, she is literally almost dead right now. They end up having to bring her back with CPR. They're bringing some of the tunnels down behind them to make sure the Darkling won't follow them. She also brought the chapel down on top of the Darkling before they left. Or during this whole thing, a lot happened. After a few days, Mal is doing better. He is now limping along with the group. Alina is still being carried by the group on kind of a stretcher type thing. And we learn they are taking her to the apparat, and also all the pilgrims and the followers of Sancta Alina. We also learned during this time that Tolia and Tamara are followers of the apparat. That's why they were leading the army. That's why they let the apparat get away. And all the other stuff they did. Mal lets her know the others are nervous about the last amplifier. Also, Sergi is just really mentally not doing great. He did see the girl he loved get ripped open in front of him, so fair. Now, Genia and David are tracking slowly behind the other group since Genia is so weak herself. And the pilgrims and people are calling her Razrushaya, the ruined. Razrusha, the ruined. Mal tells Alina to rest, and she tells Mal, you should have let me die. You should have let me kill him. She then talks with Tolia and Tamara. She's feeling very betrayed by them. Very fair emotion to be having right now. And they just explain you would have never let us that close otherwise. She also tells Tolia and Tamara to inform everybody that Genia is not to be called the ruined, and if so, their tongue will be cut out. She can walk barely now by the time they get to the apparat. She's walking with some help. All the pilgrims are chanting, Sancta Alina! And the apparat is telling her about how they will make a new Ravka. She gets to her room, she's finally looking at her reflection for the first time and realizes her hair is now white. She also looks really, really rough. Like, so bad. She looks malnourished. It's not going great for her. But, you know, what's to be expected from somebody that almost died, right? Once she gets settled in, she tells Mal, I can't summon. She's saying it's probably because I'm weak and just too far underground, but eventually she tells Mal, I can't summon. My power is gone. And that is where we leave book 2. Let's get into book 3. Look, I can't lie, it's been a while. Also, I just recorded 30 minutes of this, and then I took the battery out because I needed to change it without stopping the recording, so I'm redoing this right now. But we're gonna get through it, okay? I'm just a little refreshed, we're warmed up, it's gonna go great now. Anyways, let's get into Ruin and Rising, and for those of y'all who watched the show that got canceled, you can finally figure out the ending if you haven't read the books yet. Congratulations. Okay. We start with the prologue, which shows us that Alina has been completely isolated from everybody by the apparat, and also the apparat is not letting her above the ground, because she's under the ground, so he's not letting her above ground. Yeah, that makes sense. We also know that the Darkling is ruling as King of Ravka, but he does have a challenger that people have nicknamed the Prince of the Sky, which we're pretty sure is Nikolai, because who else would it be, honestly? She does a lot of these services with the apparat, but her sun powers aren't there, remember? So we have these two pyros that reflect off glass and make it look like her sun powers are working for the people. And this is Stig and Harshaw. Harshaw has a little more flair for the dramatics. So Alina can tell that he's the one doing the fire today because her light is extra spicy right now. After the service, she is talking in this fake sweet facade to the apparat because he wants her to be this motherly patron saint sort of figure and not who she truly is, which is a fighter. A girl who's just trying to save the world? Anyways, she's trying to convince the apparat to let her go to what they call the kettle, basically just the kitchens, to go see Genia today so Genia can fix her face with her tailoring abilities because she's still not looking super great right now because of almost dying. The apparat after this just basically threatens to kill her friends. He doesn't actually say it, but he threatens it if she doesn't listen to him. You are playing really stupid games right now. Anyways, she ends up making the shadows on the side of the wall creep up. Yeah, no, you heard me right. Shadows. Apparently when they did their kissing, stealing power thing, she stole some of his shadow powers. It's only scraps, so she can't really do anything with it, but it's enough to freak the apparat out to basically get him to not threaten her as much, you know? They're now taking her to the library or archives where they have all of Morozov's journals that they've been studying through. But they stop at the training room on their way there where Mal is fighting against a Grisha, basically teaching all the other humans there without Grisha abilities on how to fight them and win. The apparat pulls him aside and goes, I don't think you should be teaching them this. Tolia and Tamara should be doing this since they are the most experienced and most loyal. Mal just goes, I have something to teach and they have something to learn. The apparat then asks about the new recruits and why they're not tattooed. The recruits he's talking about are 12 years old. Mal goes, I'm not tattooing them because if we don't win this war, then that's a death sentence for them to have it. They will be hunted down. I'm not doing that to the kids. The apparat still isn't convinced, and then Alina chimes in with her matronly saint voice and is like, please, as a favor to me. The apparat agrees to it, begrudgingly. She's in the archives now. David comes over to her and gives her the salve they've been putting on Genia to heal the scars that she got from the Nietzsche Voya that the Darkling attacked her with when he learned that she betrayed him by letting Alina go. We learn here that Morozov's journals have just shown them nothing in all reality. They still only have the hunch that Alina has that the firebird is in the same town that she was born in. Alina finally makes her way to the kettle to go see Genia. She puts the salve on Genia, and then Genia starts working on her face. They're talking. They're pretty good friends again now. which after the betrayal, I mean, pretty impressive, but go for it, I guess, if you want to trust her. I don't know if I would, but sure. As her face is getting tailored by Genia, she's playing with the tin in her hands, and they both see at the same time a single word written on it that says, today. Now, Genia seems like she's trying to explain what's about to happen to her, but they hear heavy boots stomping towards them, and then the apparat burst in the room with a group of soldiers as well. And the apparat says, clear the room. And then they bring in Nadia, David, Zoya, and Mal. And Tolia and Tamara are guarding them. The apparat tells Alina, they were plotting against you. Tamara overheard it, so I'll let her explain. Tamara explains that she overheard that David was building an exploding powder, and then they were going to take her to the surface, collapse all the tunnels behind them, leaving no way out for anybody else underground, and then they were going to double-cross Mal and take her to the Darkling. Alina is very confused because she's pretty sure that none of these people would do anything like that. They keep on telling her about how they're betraying her, blah, blah, blah. She notices that Mal is looking up at the ceiling, which is not normal for him. He's not somebody to just stare randomly at the ceiling when serious stuff is going on. We know that the reason Alina has been coming here is because the kettle is the only place where there's airflow from the outside because of the ovens that are in there, which means there is a chance that she would be able to get a little closer to the sunlight and maybe get her abilities back. She tells the apparat and the guards to release them. The apparat tries to convince the guards that she's just a confused girl and doesn't know what she's talking about. She just wants to save her friend. He keeps going on and on and on like this. Eventually, Mal shouts, now, and grabs the bag of exploding powder out of the apparat's hand, throws it up. Zoya and Nadia use their wind powers to keep it up in the air, and then Mal shoots it, and it explodes, taking many layers of the dirt away. But they're also using their wind powers to keep the dirt from crushing everybody in the room. The apparat is shouting, they're trying to kill our saint! And this is when Alina feels her power slowly flood back into her and then fills the room with light. The apparat is still shouting, save her. Most of the guards don't know what to do at this point, but two of the guards end up charging at Zoya and Nadia, who are holding up the debris so it doesn't crush all of them, so they're not able to guard themselves. Alina is getting ready to use the cut when Mal steps in and takes the two guards down. More fighting is happening all around them. Eventually, Alina lets the cut go and it cuts through a table and many, many layers of the cave wall. This is when all the soldiers just take a knee and bow to her. She then decides she needs to leave some kind of mark so they won't try to do anything like this again to her. She asks one of the guards to open his shirt. She puts her hand on his chest right above his heart and heats it up with her sun powers and basically just brands him, but he's more than happy about it because in his eyes, she is a saint. After this, she really debates on killing the apparat, but they know that would cause more problems for them than fix things, so they leave him alive. But she tells him to go to his room and pray, and then they'll meet in an hour to lead a service, say goodbye to the group, and then her and her group of people are leaving and going above ground to start hunting for the firebird and finding Nikolai. She told somebody to gather all the Grisha in her room. They do. When she gets there, she explains everything to them about how they're going to go above ground. They're going to try to find Nikolai and then the firebird, and whoever wants to come can. Everybody out of this group, besides one person, a healer that wants to stay here to make sure they still have medical access, basically, in this underground cavern, because they know there's going to be more people coming in as well that will need healing. But this means, on this journey, we're going to have Alina, Mal, Tolia, Tamara, Harshaw, Stig, Zoya, Nadia, Adric, Genia, and David. And Sergi. I'm so sorry, I almost forgot about him. Sergi is still mentally unwell, by the way. Mal knows that this will be too big of a group to hunt the firebird in, so if they don't find Nikolai, they're gonna have to find somewhere else to stash some of these people while a group of them goes off to hunt the firebird. These two talk about her shadow powers. She explains to him that they're just scraps from the darkling from when it happened. She doesn't really have any powerful powers from it. It's just a party trick, basically. They discuss on how they're going to track down Nikolai, and then he says, I'll guard your door. We all know how it went last time. He decided to guard her door, or was supposed to. Maybe he'll actually stay this time. Once he leaves, she goes to her bed, and she lays down and decides to try something that she's tried before but has never worked. But this time it does, and all of a sudden, boom, she's in front of the darkling. She is using the connection now that they have, that he was using against her to appear in front of her during the last book, against him this time. She appears in front of him. We can see he's in the throne room, but it's very, very blurry around. She can't see any details, and she wouldn't know where he was unless she knew that place very, very well. When somebody is touching the darkling, she can see their features a little clearer, but that's about it. The darkling sees her clearly and tells everybody to get out of the room and goes over to talk to her. They talk about her betrayal. He offers for her to still rule as his queen, and they can rule as equals. She's like, yeah, right. She then cups his face and whispers an insult into his ear. He opens his eyes in rage, and she's out of there. She severs the connection real fast. Mal then knocks on her door to take her to the Apparat town council meeting they're having together. She says goodbye to the people in a very stoic, saint-like way, and then our group of 12 is off to the tunnels. Now, during this tunnel travel, they're in these for days. We get this random Grisha theory, like calls to like. But Morozova seemed to believe that if the world could be broken down into the same small parts, each Grisha should be able to manipulate them. Are we not all things? Just keep that in mind, I guess. This is basically saying, why shouldn't all Grisha be able to control all the elements? And that's what Morozova was working on. Of what we know, Morozova was a fabricator and a healer, which isn't a thing that happens, ever. Also, they have a little furry companion buddy. It's a little orange cat. Its name is Oncat, very creative. Harsha is actually also a little bit insane. Not like Sergi, where he's probably clinically insane. He's just a little crazy, and life of the party, honestly. On the 4th day of their underground tunnel journey, they're in this cave. There's these dark pools with these glowing fish, and Mal sticks his hand in. One of them bites him. He says, ow, pulls it out real fast. Alina just responds, serves you right for thinking you can just stick your hand in a random dark puddle in a cave. He goes back with her and then goes back to Sirius pretty fast. Now, these two haven't really talked in most of the travel time they've had down here, or it's been very vague, polite conversation they've been having. She goes up to him and says, you didn't fail me. He denies this. She then goes, we're gonna have to talk. We're gonna be traveling together for who knows how long trying to find Nikolai and the firebird. Is that so horrible? Mal responds, it wouldn't be if all I wanted to do was talk. She ends up blushing a little. He says, I need to be able to protect you and do my job. But please don't make me pretend like it's easy to just be your friend. Got it. Mal is still down real bad for Alina over here. Now, the whole group is talking now. And then all of a sudden, they hear this giant boom coming from above them. More explosions start rattling the tunnel. Mal says it's just a random attack. It's something the Darkling forces have been doing for a while now. They know the Apparat is underground. So they've been trying to cave in these tunnels, but they don't know exactly where they are. Squallers in the group end up using their powers. We have Adric, Nadia, and Zoya that are squallers, so they're all trying to keep the tunnel up. Alina is backed up against the wall with a group and is right next to Mal and Zoya. She ends up grabbing Mal's hands first, and then she also reaches out to grab Zoya's free hand that isn't summoning the air right now. After the explosion stops, they find Tolia and Tamara and Adric trapped behind a layer of rock that Adric was keeping up all by himself, because as soon as he steps out, it just collapses on where they were. They then find Sergi and Stig, who are trapped under a bunch of rock. I don't believe either of them is a squaller. And Zoya only finds them by using this air trick to manipulate where her voice is and where their voice is coming from so she can figure out where they are. It ends up taking them about 2 hours to dig them out of there. Everybody's okay though, and they keep moving on a little to get out of the scary tunnel, and then they camp for the night. When they finally make it outside, they're above ground from these tunnels, they step out, and it's nighttime, but Alina's like glowing, but they describe it as the silver starlight glowing. And I just, must be so pretty with her white hair as well. She stops herself from glowing, and then they walk until they find a campsite for the night. While they're walking, a militia passes by that is obviously part of the Darklings group. They're hiding in the tall grass. They haven't been walking directly on the roads. They're not that stupid, luckily. They end up making camp, and Tamara sets right out to get to the town by the next day because she knows some of Nikolai's men have been in this area before. This is one of his trading / privateer earning areas. So Tamara should be able to spot somebody if they're there, or that somebody will recognize her. Tamara makes it back. She says there's no sign of any of Nikolai's men, but she has learned that West Ravka has stopped trading with the Darkling, cutting them off from the shoreline. They discuss the possibility of her going back tomorrow, but they can't decide if it's too risky or not. Since she was just hanging around there for a whole day, it may be pretty obvious if she goes and does it again. Alina goes off to find Mal, who isn't there, to fill him in on everything. Mal is fishing in the river with his hands. He's not catching any of them because they can't start a fire without being too obvious. I mean, couldn't Alina just cook the fish or one of the pyros without starting a whole big fire? But it's whatever. Anyways, he's doing that. They end up talking about if they need to drop the other half of the group before they find the firebird. It would be a long detour, but it would probably be safer for them to drop them with Nikolai's people in West Ravka. Now, Mal does not have his shirt on while he's fishing in the water, and he's been facing her. He turns around, and she sees that he has this giant sun tattoo. Now, of her knowledge, he hadn't been marked before. So she goes, when did you get that? Why? Mal responds with, I have a lot of scars, but this is one I chose. There's an ancient Ravka saying on it. I'm gonna try my best to say it for you. Iasta Resku. She asks what it means, thank goodness, and he explains it means, I am become a blade. Can I ask, what does that mean? Because I don't know. I am become a blade. I guess he's become a blade. He's a weapon in himself, is what they explain it as. She starts tracing one of the sunbeams that goes all the way down his back and starts going back up. He turns around, grabs her wrist, and says, don't. Then a group of 3 people come out of the trees and says, hands up. They're part of the militia they had seen yesterday going down the road. They know she's the Sun Summoner and have the whole group back at camp guarded as well. I hit the wall so hard. They tie up their hands and take them back to the rest of the group. They're all talking about what they should do with them, taking them back to the Darkling or blah, blah, blah. She says, you should try to auction us off to Nikolai. And they start talking about Nikolai and how he's not bad looking. And then a voice from above says, not bad looking. He's damnably handsome, brave as a bear, smart as a whip, an excellent dancer, and an even better shot. And then the leader gets shot in the head and chaos erupts. His men are dropping down from the sky. He's dropping down from the sky. Mal jumps over to protect Alina from the gunshots that are going everywhere. Nikolai shows up and looks at Mal and goes, what are you doing half naked and barefoot, man? Nikolai cuts the rope off of both of their wrists and says, now we run, and they run towards the open field. They get to the field, and the ground starts to feel like it's moving and shaking and lifting up, which it is. Nikolai just says, hold on. When Alina looks up, there's this giant flying ship, which is called the Pelican because it has this giant underbelly for some reason. For storage, I guess? I don't know. They're all up. Alina's like, let's go! Mal and Nikolai look at her and go, we can't leave any survivors. They can't know we have the Sun Summoner. Mal jumps off the platform as well as Tolia and Tamara. They're all fighting them. They take all of them down. Tolia and Tamara have climbed back up the rope. Mal has his legs wrapped up in the rope too, start climbing back up, when one last person ends up sprinting at Mal. Mal has no ways to defend himself, so Alina ends up using the cut on this person. Now, her response to using the cut on this person is to go throw up. And the book describes her doing that because she's never killed a person before, but I think the people on the skiff would argue with her about that. She left them in the fold to die, which, I mean, I get it, but this isn't the first person you've killed, honey. Alina catches Nikolai up on some stuff, and then she also goes to their group of 12 and tells them not to use Genia's name because she is the one who tried to kill the king. And she doesn't know how Nikolai's gonna react to that. We learn that Nikolai did get Bagra out, and he comments on her white hair, because why wouldn't you? Nikolai also tells her that he came back the night of the attack in the Kingfisher to try and come save her, but he saw the chapel crumbled to the ground, and all the Nichevoya going over it, knowing he couldn't get in there, but luckily they paid the Kingfisher no mind. She explains to him how she tried to kill the Darkling, but also explains that she does not still have access to that power, because that's the first thing Nikolai was going to ask about. Nikolai asks, how high is the price of you using magic? And she says, it doesn't matter, I'll pay it. And she realizes while they're talking that she truly did miss him. I mean, who wouldn't? They arrive at Nikolai's mountaintop dockyard, which is above the cloud level, so it's very high up. They dock in, and he then takes them up to this room in the mountain. The ceiling is glass, so it's gorgeous, let's be honest. Nikolai explains that this mountain was built out for the pilgrims to use as they were coming to Ravka or going between countries. It was supposed to be like that, but nobody's used it in quite a long time, so a couple years ago he started renovations on it so he could use it as a base if need be. And now need be is it's a need. She asks to see Bagra, and Nikolai takes her to her. She's here with Bagra, and Misha is also here as well. Alina tells him to go find Mal to train with him, so Misha will have more to do than just read Bagra's stories and take care of her all the time. He is a 8-year-old boy. She also hints about maybe bringing all the Grisha children here. She tells Bagra that her son is still alive, and she needs help trying to figure out how to use the magic. Bagra's like, I don't want to show you how to use magic, and also, I don't really want to kill my own son. They talk about the firebird, and Bagra assures her that Morozov would not have left a task unfinished, so the firebird is definitely the third amplifier. Then Mal comes in the room and tells Alina there's a problem with Genia and the king. Apparently Sergi, who is in horrible mental health right now, ended up saying her name accidentally. Long story short, they all go to talk with Nikolai and the king and queen, who are also in this area. We learn that the way Genia was poisoning the king was by putting this poison all over his body, knowing that the king would force himself on her. And the reason that she is not affected by this poison is because she would burn it off with lye and then heal her body after every time. Nikolai, after hearing this, goes, "Oh, well, I'm gonna banish my parents now, and then we'll have a trial after all this happens, and they'll probably stay banished forever." He does also have to tell Genia that she'll have to have a trial because she did try to kill the king, but like, she's gonna be fine, right? After this, David and Genia have a very sweet moment, and they finally kiss. But it's a strange choice, because after she talks about a man forcing himself on her, the way they have their first kiss is by David grabbing her face and kissing her. I mean, she's perfectly fine with it. It's a weird choice to make right here, I think. It works out, so I guess we're fine, but I just feel like we could have wrote a better kiss scene for after the scene I just read. And everybody else who read this book just read. Mal and Alina go back to her room. He lets her know that Talia tomorrow and him will be in the room right next to her if she needs anything. He's telling her a bunch of other stuff, but she can not pay attention to save her life right now. They end up talking about everything, and Alina asks him to tell her more about that tattoo that he has. Tattoo? I don't know how I just said that word. He says it's an oath in Old Rovkin. It's basically a promise to be better than he was, which he really needed right now. And also a reminder that wanting is different than deserving. He's talking about her. She asks Mal. She says, "What do you want, Mal?" He just goes, "Don't ask me that." Why? And he says, "I want to kiss you, Alina, and make you forget about everybody else, so please just tell me to go." She does think about this option for a minute, but then tells him good night. The next morning, they had found Sergi in the water boiler storage room area there. Kind of cave-like, almost. Alina talks to him and explains that Nikolai has camps on the ground and they could send him to one of those, and Sergi just goes, "Yes, please, oh my gosh, please send me to one of those." So they arrange for him to go there in a day or so. Then Bagra and Misha come to find her. Bagra has agreed to train her. So they take her up to the balcony that's off of that big giant room with the glass ceiling and says, "Okay, cut the top of that mountain that's a couple miles away off." "I'm sorry, what?" She tries and fails, shockingly. A crowd starts filling in around her. Misha fills in Bagra on how she did with brutal honesty. She tries again and hits it this time, but it doesn't take it off. She's very impressed with herself, but Bagra isn't. And Bagra says, "We say like calls to like, girl. But if the science is small enough, then we are like all things. The light lives in the space between. It is there in the soil of that mountain, in the rock and in the snow. The cut is already made." Sounds familiar, right? Now, Mal and Adric are betting on her and betting against other people who are betting against her chopping off the mountain. And she ends up focusing and basically feeling the light that's inside of the mountain and slices the top of it off. And of course, everybody on the balcony cheers. Now later that day, we learn Tamara is going to be the captain of their ship that they're taking to find the firebird. Learn that she will have Nadia and Zoya as squallers on there. Also, Tamara and Nadia are kind of a thing. They've been very flirty throughout this book. They're just side characters, so I don't get a chance to mention them as much, and nothing's really happened, but just know that that's going on as well. Also, Stig will be on there, and a few from Nikolai's crew. Nikolai is like, it'd probably go a little faster if you had more experienced folk. And Tamara's like, no, we work well together. I'm taking them. They should all be able to leave by the end of the week, and Alina's planning on going with them. Nikolai talks with her and says, it would be good for us to go to West Ravka to show that we have the Sun Summoner, show them your strength, and to just build their confidence in us to keep their alliance. She agrees to join him, and she will meet up with the Firebird crew a week into their journey. That night, she's looking off of the balcony at the mountain she had cut earlier that day. Nikolai comes out and says, I have a gift for you. And it is his mother's emerald ring, which a lot of people know is the ring he's going to give to his future wife. He explains the ring to her, they banter for a little bit, and then he reveals that his father was a Fijarden ambassador. So he is truly a bastard child, but he's also the only one in line for the throne right now. They talk for that a little. She asks when he's going to take the crown for Ravka. He explains, I will not be taking that until I am back in the palace and can do it properly. He then goes, you could have told me about Genia. She just goes, I was trying to protect her. He responds to that with, I don't want any secrets between us. She then snaps right back at him about all the secrets that he has and probably still has. They end up having a friendly little argument. She ends up winning, so Nikolai's like, well, it's not an argument if I didn't win. Now, Mal is running up and down the stairs on the side of the mountain. Didn't know there were stairs there, but there are. He's running up and down those shirtless. Nikolai says, I have some work to do if I'm going to keep up with that. Nikolai asks Alina then if he's still going to be the head of her guard. She says, I don't know, but we should probably get him back on the field as a tracker. She tries to hand the ring back to him, saying, I can't accept this right now, and he just says, keep it. She goes back to her room, finding out all these super nice dresses that he has on her bed for her because of the trip they're going on. She needs to look nice, but also it's a bunch of pretty dresses. I mean, who wouldn't be excited about that? She then goes over to where the rest of the girls are bunking right now and brings them into her room, tells them all about the ring. They're playing dress up. They're having a great little girly sleepover time. It's really freaking cute. They're all agreeing about how she would make a wonderful queen as well. After they leave, she lays down on her bed and goes to talk to the darkling again. Stop. You don't have to. This is like the girl that just keeps going back to her ex, even though it would make so much sense for her to never talk to that person again. This is what Alina's doing right now. She can't tell where he is, but he's asking her about Nikolai and if he's going to be his queen, blah, 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 all this stuff. He goes on about how he will never understand her, and he says, you are meant to be my balance, Alina. You are the only person in the world who might rule with me, who might keep my power in check. The darkling then says, I want you to know my real name. Honestly, I forgot he could even have a real name at this point. I just accepted that he was birthed and given the name Darkling. His real name is Alexander. And Alina can't help but laugh at that because a mortal being is named Alexander of all things. She was just expecting something more epic, as well as me. I snickered at the same time she did in the book. He asked her to say it. She does. Are you like Beetlejuice or something, man? Do we have to say it 3 times and you'll just appear? He then puts his mouth against her throat. She says, don't. He says, it's not real, just let me. She thinks about it for a minute and then remembers that this man is a literal monster, so she pushes him off of her. He then tells her that he will be entering the fold with a plan David left behind and then uses the cut, and she wakes up and scrambles and runs over to find David. She has to wake Tamara up so Tamara can tell her where David is. She scrambles in there. David and Genia are laying in the bed together. They wait for David to get dressed, and then they end up talking about what the heck he left behind. He explains that one of his notebooks would have had a plan for a glass skiff that would have this substance called lumia, basically like glow stick juice, but it would need just a little bit of her sunlight to stay lit in the fold, so there's no way the darkling could be using it. She then tells them about the little bit of shadow powers that she has, knowing that the darkling probably also has a little bit of sun powers, and then tells them he will break Westravka, and then nobody will ally with Nikolai. They're all in the room trying to figure out a plan. They end up setting a time that they will go and attack the darkling before he has a chance to enter the fold and destroy Westravka, hopefully. Before this time, they're going to try to find the firebird so she can actually have the final amplifier and hopefully actually have a good chance against the darkling in this final battle. If she doesn't have the amplifier, they're just gonna do their best and all die together. The next day, she goes and tells Baghra about everything. Baghra still does not want to give her any helpful information until Alina tells her his name, Alexander. And then Baghra tells us everything. Baghra was Morozov's daughter. When he was not out trying to make other amplifiers, they lived in a quiet village. This village did not like Grisha, but he would still act as a healer for them sometimes. Now, Baghra's mother did not like Baghra because of the powers she also had. She was terrified of her own daughter, but she loved Baghra's sister, who didn't have any powers. One day they were playing and the sister really wanted to play with Baghra's toy, and the mother made her give the toy to her. The little sister then breaks her toy, and Baghra, a child, responds with using the cut on her sister. Talk about a scarring experience. Literally. Her father, Morozovas, ends up bringing her sister back to life, which was far too much for the townspeople to accept, so they then throw her father and her sister in the river to drown. She says, he definitely lived and got my sister out, and they went to go live somewhere else. He wouldn't have left the amplifiers uncompleted. Baghra then says, when she had her son, the Darkling, she told him to take care of Grisha, and that they could make a better world for the Grisha. Clearly has taken that a bit too far. Baghra says, but Alina, you need to put your hunger for power aside. You may not be able to survive the sacrifice that the final amplifier will require. She then talks about how her father probably ended up taking his own life because that's what all powerful Grisha end up doing because they're immortal. Later, Alina sends a plea to the apparat to send the Soldat Soul to the place that they plan to attack the Darkling in a couple of weeks. Nikolai and Alina have changed their plan. They're not going to go to West Ravka anymore because that's a horrible idea. They are warning them, though, so they're not just going to die. But she still will be separated from the Firebird troop for a week before she's able to join them, because they're going to be trying to make some powerful allies in Ravka and get some more soldiers and stuff as well. She goes back down to say goodbye to Bagra and Misha and gives Misha a little sun soldier pin that he can pin on his chest. It's very cute. Now, on her way out, she starts thinking about what if she is Morozova's other daughter's child lineage somehow, making her related like a cousin to the Darkling, which she has kissed. She does not like this train of thought and is a little terrified by that fact and very grossed out. Nikolai then comes running down the stairs for her because there is a meteor shower happening and he wants to show her it. He also wants to parade her around in front of everybody to show their alliance and show they're kind of a thing now. As she's walking up the stairs with Nikolai, she sees Mal running down as well, with just this hope in his eyes to show her this. When he sees Nikolai, it dies a little, but he just nods and makes an excuse for being down there. After they watch the meteor shower for a bit, they go off to the side to talk. They're talking. Nikolai's like, you know, I could make you forget about him, right? Over time, at least. And then after a bit, he says, I'm going to ask you to be my wife if we live through the battle with the Darkling, and I will have Mal reassigned. She understands, but they do kind of jokingly go back and forth on if they need to marry each other. They both know it's more of a power alliance, but he truly believes that they could grow to love each other. Now, this whole time they've been holding hands, sitting close, but Alina is feeling no spark, not like the one she feels with Mal or even the one she felt with the Darkling. They have their normal flirty banter, then he cups her face, and the book describes it as a promise of a kiss because he basically just puts his lips on hers. I don't know how to describe this. He brushes his lips against hers. It's not really a kiss, it's just like a promise of a kiss. It's what the book says. Now, the next morning, these two are saying goodbye to the Firebird crew on the balcony. Nikolai is telling Mal that he will give him whatever he wants when all of this is over, and Mal just responds with, just deserve her. And now it's just her and Nikolai on the balcony. She asks how long it's going to take them to get where they're going. Nikolai starts to respond, but then he's grabbed by a shadow creature and lurched up into the air. The Nichavoya are here, which means the Darkling is also here. She then feels a claw lifting into her shoulder and also lifting her up. This is when Mal and Tamara and Tolya run through the door and grab her and get her back down, luckily. When she looks out, she can see her view is full of shadow creatures and also hears chaos coming from the mountain room behind her as well, knowing they are killing everybody inside. Alina yells at Tamara to get everybody else out. Tamara tries to argue with this, but Mal tells her to go. She's wondering how the Darkling found them when she sees Sergi held up by Nichavoya. The Darkling is asking her if he should spare him for betraying her, and she's like, please just spare him, knowing that he is so mentally unwell. And the Darkling goes, oh, but you forgot one small thing. He betrayed me first, and then has the shadow creatures rip him limb from limb. Ooh, graveyard is getting full, unfortunately. Our board grows smaller once more. And the graveyard grows bigger once more. This is ruthless for a YA book. The Darkling is taunting her. She's shouting for Nikolai when a shadow creature swoops down, holding him, dropping him onto the balcony. He's on the balcony. She runs over to him, and then the Darkling starts stretching out his power, and then it goes down Nikolai's throat and starts infecting him, and it basically turns him into this half monster, half man thing. Nikolai flies away because this monster part of him wants to eat and destroy humans, and he doesn't want to do that to them. She screams at the Darkling to fight her. He's like, why would I do that? And then he just tells the shadow creatures to seize them, her and Mal. While the shadow creatures are flying over to them, they just stop flying over to them. And that's when we see Bagra has come out. Bagra is now controlling these shadow creatures. Misha is with her. Bagra walks all the way to the end of the balcony to talk with the Darkling. The Darkling says, I won't fight you. Bagra says, true, true. That's why I still have hope. And then she looks at Alina and goes, don't fail me again, girl. The Darkling is pleading, begging Bagra to go, begging his mom to leave. And this is when Bagra jumps over the balcony, bringing all the shadow creatures with her, and the Darkling hurtling after her, trying to save her. Finally, Alina listens to Bagra and runs. Misha is also coming with them, of course. They're running through all the chaos of the main deck. They finally get down to the ship that they're supposed to be riding on. Everybody is there except for Stig. Nadia and Zoya start getting the ship out of there. Adric is bleeding out on the deck. He's been his arm is very torn up. Genia is working on healing him. Tolia is working on the ship right now, but is called over to help Adric once they're a little safer and farther away from the chaos of it all. Poor little Misha just curls up in a corner because, I mean, talk about trauma. He's lost his mom. Bagra just jumped off of a balcony in front of his eyes. This poor baby. Tolia then comes over to help Genia. They get Adric steady, at least. He's not going to die. He will lose his arm, but he's gonna live. They all agree to still go with hunting the firebird plan, and they will figure out the rest later. Alright, quick intermission. I have bad news, we never see Stig again. Bagra is very, very dead. It was not a fake out of any sort. Okay, the graveyard is officially very, very crowded. I didn't kill them. It wasn't me. I didn't write the book. While they're traveling, David teaches Alina on how light bounces off and reflects off of things to make them visible to human eyes. And so they figure out how they can continue traveling during the daytime and not be spotted is by her making the bottom of the ship invisible, which she figures out, and she does. She now has the power of invisibility. They never stopped for about 2 days. Zoya and Nadia are their only alive squallers, so as soon as they touch down, these two just collapse. Alina and Mal go off to find some firewood and fire kindling. They split up once they're in the woods to do that, so they can start a fire, even though they have Harshaw here. Do we really need kindling as well? Okay. I don't know how fire works. I figured he could just make the log catch on fire, okay? While Alina is by herself, she hears a noise, she looks up, and it is the monster version of Nikolai standing up there. He sees her, she tries to say something to him, but he just ends up flying away very fast. But Nikolai, even in monster form, is still alive. She then cries and screams about everything that's happened today. Mal finds her and tells her, you know, it would be good for the others to see you grieve. He comforts her and they end up going back to the group. They're all talking about a lot of various things that have happened in their past, sharing stories. She takes Oncat and ends up cuddling with him. It's as sweet as a night can be after such a tragedy around the fire for a bunch of friends here. They also talk briefly if there may be a cure for Nikolai. They've agreed to split into 2 groups. So, we have one group that will be Tamara, Nadia, and Adric, Genia, and David. They're all gonna travel together to a town and secure lodging for them. And then Tolia, Harshaw, Alina, Mal, and Zoya would all travel to where these 2 are from to track down the firebird. They're all saying their goodbyes. She goes and says goodbye to Misha and tells him that he's going to have to go with Genia and David and watch out for the group like he always did for Bagra, who's over here. She's dead. They all go to hunt the firebird. After a week of looking for it, they end up finding it. It tries to kill Alina by pushing her off a cliff. Mal gets to her in time, grabs her wrist, and they feel that jerk of electricity power between them again. And they both realize in that moment that Mal is the 3rd amplifier, not the firebird. He pulls her back up, and he is Morozova's other daughter's great lineage of some sort. So this is bad news because this means she's gonna have to kill Mal to get the 3rd amplifier power, and she doesn't want to do that, obviously. They get back to the group, they tell them that the firebird isn't the 3rd amplifier. The group's like, huh? They say, Mal is, and he just goes off to find some food for all of them to eat tonight. Zoya's sitting with Alina, and Zoya's like, you had to know. And Alina starts to remember all the times that now make it seem so obvious. She thinks about how the first time she used her powers was when Mal was laying dying in her arms. They searched for the stag for weeks, but only found it after they kissed. When they found the sea whip, she had been standing in the circle of his arms, the first time since they had been aboard that ship. The amplifiers clearly wanted to be brought together. Mal has come back, he's sitting across the fire, gets up, holds out his hand to her, and leads her into his tent. They cuddle up together for the first time in who knows how long. He ends up grabbing her wrist so she can feel the power surging through him and her again. She just says, we'll find another way. He responds, no, we won't. The next day, they go back to the rest of the group. As they're walking back, it goes back to how it used to be. They're not super close for most of the journey back. One night he shoots something down from the sky and it lands in the field, and he says, not everyone dies for a reason, and jogs off. There had been previous conversation before this. She goes after him and says, don't say that, don't even think that, and he just grins. He tries to explain to her what he's thinking, but she doesn't even let him. She says, don't say it's going to be okay, and he just goes, it's not going to be okay. None of this is happening for a reason. And saints, I want to live forever. And then kisses her, and they continue like this for a while. They make it back to the rest of the group, about to tell them their news, when the other group tells them that the darkling has marched on Karamzin and the orphanage where she grew up at. and where all the Grisha children currently are. The group doesn't know what happened. She goes to Tamara and says, give me your key. Grabs her key, runs into her room, lays down, and uses the mind connection to talk with the darkling. She sees that Karamzin is destroyed, and Botkin and the lady that ran the orphanage and basically raised her are hanging from a tree with a bunch of other dead bodies. He's over there. Sorry. He tells her he has the children and will be taking them into the fold in 5 days and will be expanding it over West Ravka, unless she surrenders herself. She goes back and tells her group what she saw, and they say, he's gonna find a reason to do it at some point. He's gonna do this anyway. Alina is begging them, just let me go to him, let me save them. Mal says, at what cost? You're willing to give up yourself, but you won't let me die for you? She responds with, because I can't bear it. And he says, you will bear it. Or all these deaths, and all we've given up will be for nothing. Then Genia's like, actually, David has an idea on what we could do. And then they get over to David, and David's like, actually, it was Genia's idea. I'm gonna be so honest right now, guys. We don't care we don't care. We don't care who came up with the idea. The first idea they had was to sneak into the camp with the invisibility that Alina can apply, but they know with all the guards and the darkling being there, that's not really gonna work. The next idea is that Alina makes them invisible, the squallers mute their noise in the fold so they can sneak up on the darkling or be there beforehand and have a surprise attack. And then, with the army that the Apparat is sending over to them, they will have guns and be able to shoot down the Darkling's men and the Darkling himself even, at least. Which they know that won't kill him, but then at least they can get exploding powder, explode the Grisha ship, and then Alina can take him down. Also, they will get the children out of the skiff before they blow up it. That's a very important detail that I left out. The next few days are working on getting her invisibility better so she can keep a whole group of them invisible. And then the Apparat's men show up, and it's 12 of them. Because the Apparat actually didn't tell the majority, and only the guy that she had marked and 12 others showed up because they found the letter that the Apparat was hiding from everybody. They then cross through the Shadowfold to get to West Ravka so they can attack from that side instead. They set up in an abandoned town. Alina walks on her own to go look out at the sea, and that's when monster Nikolai shows up again. She shows Nikolai the ring that Nikolai had given her. He clearly recognizes it. He can't speak anymore, but she knows that Nikolai is still in there. She explains to him that David is working on a way to cure him, and then Nikolai rests his head on her shoulder, and then all of a sudden grabs her. She screams, and then he lets go and flies away because his instincts were starting to take over. Zoya appears and is very confused. Alina explains to her that that was Nikolai. Now, the night before the battle, they have a picnic meal in the living room by the fire all together. They're having a good time. Everybody's kind of going off in pairs. Later, Mal and Alina are doing the finals weapons check, and then he leads her into this sunroom greenhouse that's attached to the building as well. The whole room is glass. And they have a very sweet moment in there. While they're kissing, Mal says, I wanted more for you. I wanted a white veil in your hair and vows that we could keep. She goes, a proper wedding night? And continues by just saying, just tell me this isn't goodbye. And he just responds with, I love you. Now, he's made them agree that if this plan doesn't work out, then Alina will kill him and get the final amplifier power. They start making out a little more, and he says, you are all I've ever wanted. You are my whole heart. And then fade to black. They do some activities. Genia gets her ready the next morning and says she needs to look her best to put the Darkling in the ground. Fighting words from Genia. I respect it. Genia and David are staying back with Misha since they are not good fighters anyways. It just made sense. They've also made some of the glowing liquid David has designed, so if Alina does go down in battle, the remnants of her sunlight in that liquid should be able to get the others out of the fold. They all make it into the fold where they want to be. They start seeing the skiffs. Alina makes them invisible. They have the squallers muting their sound as well. And then Alina sets the fold ablaze with light. The Soldette soul that are there starts shooting at the skiff, taking down the Darkling's men. The Nichavoya can't even find them because of the muted sound and Alina making them invisible. The squallers then send a wave of sand at the skiffs, and that's when the twins and Alina bolt for the skiff, so they can try and find the children. They can't find the children on the skiff, and that's when two other skiffs come into view. And the Darkling, not knowing where she is still, says, you really don't think I would sacrifice an entire fleet of skiffs for this cause, Alina? Then Alina gets shot, she goes down, and her power starts to flicker. She's trying to keep it up to keep everybody invisible, but really can't. Nikolai, as a monster, starts swooping in, picking off the shadow creatures that are trying to go against them, using the curse the Darkling put on him to help his friend still. The Darkling comes over to Alina, slams her other arm down on the skiff deck, and tells her the children aren't here. Do you really think I would risk a generation of Grisha? She's shocked. And he says, I have my summoner. Now where's my tracker? He still doesn't know that Mal is more than just a tracker. The shadow creatures are holding her. The darkling turns away from her for a second, and she uses this time to use the connection they have to make a version of herself appear in front of him. So he turns, focuses on that. That version of her uses the cut, so he calls the shadow creatures to protect her, which means they let the real Alina go. Such a 4D chess move. I'm so proud of her. She jumps off the skiff and runs. Mal finds her, puts a Grisha steel knife in her hands and says, do it. She says it's not over. He says, it is. Save them. This once let me carry you. And then puts the knife in her hands and guides it into his own chest. He falls over and she knows he's gone. Our graveyard is expanding into our normal characters, unfortunately. That is a really big hole left. Everything explodes into this white blaze of light. She feels the power flowing through her, and then it's gone. She feels nothing. No power is left. She tries calling the power again, but she knows it's truly gone from her now. Tolia and Tamara come over to her, and she just says, bring him back to me. Bring him back. And they start attempting to. She doesn't understand what's happened. The third amplifier was supposed to make her powerful, not take away her power. But then she looks on the battlefield and sees all the people that are not Grisha start to use her power. There are all of a sudden many sun summoners, and we don't know how far this power has spread throughout the world. But even just the ones in the fold are able to turn the tide. It clicks in her head that Morozova had a normal human daughter and wife. Morozova had thought himself alone in this world, so the gift of the 3 amplifiers was the gift of power. He then just hears, how, from behind her. The darkling is there saying, this can't be, not without the firebird. And then he sees Mal dead on the ground and repeats, it can't be. What have you done? He then goes towards her, putting his hand on her throat, and then she notices that the collar and the cuffs have fallen off of her. The darkling now realizes he is truly alone and starts crying out in rage. He tries to use his powers against the Soldat soul that now have the sun powers, and she knows that he will never stop. And maybe this is a form of mercy she never thought of before. She uses what little shadow power she has left, wraps it around the Grisha steel blade she has, and then stabs it into his heart. He lets out a single laugh and says, like this. He falls back, says blue sky, and she looks up and sees that the fold is splitting. They truly can see blue sky from inside the fold right now. The Soldat soul are making the fold go away. He says her name. Alina is crying, and he asks her to say his name one last time. She says it. He says, don't let me be alone, and don't give them a grave to desecrate. And then he's gone. The shadow creatures all disappear. Nikolai turns back into his normal self. Zoya catches him with her air powers on the way down, luckily. Everyone is celebrating around her. Alina is still mourning her best friend that has died. Tolia and Tamara aren't confident if they can get him back, but then she hears Mal breathe. The squallers get on the skiffs. They start taking everybody out of the fold that was in there. Alina is with Mal. Tolia continues to work on him. Nikolai is taking control like he always does in situations like this. Alina is starting to fade from all the blood she lost from getting shot in the arm, and she tells Tolia, I died today. Understand? He just responds by saying, Sancta Alina. By the time they've reached the end of the fold, they have made up a story to tell everybody what happened, including the fact that Alina, the sun summoner, died in the sacrifice to destroy the fold. And a story about how Nikolai rose from the dead. Genia comes to check on Alina later. She sees that Genia's scars are still there, but the blackness of them are gone. They look so much better. Same for the one Alina had on her shoulder that was caused by the Nichavoya. Mal is awake. Alina asks what he saw when he died. He says, nothing, I just felt pain. We also learn that Mal has also lost his tracking abilities. Before they leave their hideout, Genia makes Alina's hair red so she'll blend in a little better. She goes over to the army camp to talk with Nikolai, but acts like she's going over to talk with Tolia, so it's not so obvious what's going on. Alina and Nikolai kind of catch up over everything, talk about what's going on in the world right now. They talk about the next steps in the kingdom, and we learn that he has been nicknamed the King of Scars. He still has some scars left on his hands and on his body from where he was turned into a shadow creature. Nikolai explains that the Apparat will be there tonight, and he had to pardon the Apparat from trying to kill the king because of how powerful the Apparat is and how many people he influences. And he tells Alina, you could stay and come back with me to the Grand Palace. She says, I'm not Grisha. I have no job I can help with there. And he just says, you could stay with me as my queen. She just says, Nikolai, I am not the sun summoner anymore. Remember, marriage of power, and I have no want to go back to court. And he points at his chest saying, but you understand this thing, referring to the power he felt from the magic that caused him to turn into that creature, where he's hungering for it, but also hates that he's hungering for it. She tries to give her ring back again, and he just says, keep it. We owe you so much. Nikolai asks her, were we ever friends or were we just allies? And she just says, oh, come on. Of course we were friends. But right now, you and me are going to settle some things about the Second Army, and then we are going to watch me burn. Alrighty then. On her way to watch herself burn, she stops by Genia and gives her pardon from the king, and tells Genia that her, David, and Zoya will be leading the Second Army now. They go to the dry docks to watch them burn a fake her, which is one of the Soldat Soul that died in the battle. Sorry, I forgot to say that we did in fact lose Adric and Harshaw in the final battle. Unfortunately, they're dead. The cat lives. I just don't have a separate photo of the ferret that's representing the cat. Anyways, one of the Soldat Soul that died in the battle as well is filling in as her body. Genia had used her tailor powers to make it look like Alina. The darkling is also buried with the fake Alina. Everybody is chanting her name, Sancta Alina, and she quietly says, Alexander. Now, in the epilogue, we learn that her and Mal take over the orphanage and make it this wonderful place for all the kiddos. The Grisha still check in on them. Nikolai still sends them stuff and checks in on them as well, it's implied. And it's a very nice way to wrap up this story. Overall, I think this was a fairly well-written book and a YA book that did not hold the punches clearly on those characters. I mean, the amount of loss is just a little bit insane, but I very much respect an author that will do that and isn't afraid to be harsh. It makes the story so much more real, especially when you are dealing with wars. If you're still interested and want to read the book, go ahead and do that. I told you the main plot, but if you want some more details, you can absolutely do that. Anyways, that is all of Shadow and Bone, the entire series. I actually finished it, unlike Netflix. I don't know why I'm beefing with Netflix. I didn't even watch the show because I knew I wanted to read the books before I did. That is all for Shadow and Bones. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps out, honestly. And I will see y'all in the next video. Bye, y'all.